Okay, we're streaming.
Awesome.
Yeah, so no followers or anything on Twitch. I'm not overly worried about that. I just want to be more consistent with going live on Twitch
Right. I'll
to
post
kind of build that audience up.
a Twitter thing too. Yeah. Let's see. Send invites. Do you see us live? Oh, here we are.
You find us?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I found us too. I checked on Twitch first. I had to move over to Facebook. Find us?
Yep. Oh,
Oh,
okay, get rid of the echo. We're good.
there's still a delay.
Yeah, a little bit.
I just don't know how to fix that because last time we thought it was because of the way that we went live. This time everything's kosher, everything's good, but there's still a delay.
Right.
Hi,
I think
Jay.
there's the internet. Hey, Jake.
I just threw my phone on the floor. Hold on. Okay, let's go share it in the actual live.
Okay.
I'm excited about this episode. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We have so much information.
Be perfect.
Hi, Mark. I don't know. I keep screaming at the computer like, no, go hang out, watch some shows.
What can I do?
Go watch some shows. We are live right now, so we're gonna do the show. We'll be done in about an hour.
Is somebody here?
There's nobody's here. We're online.
Can I say hello?
You can say hello, but then you gotta go.
Hi.
Oh,
You looking at your hair? Mhm.
I look like I got run over by a bus, but I'm rolling with it.
You're going to war. It's okay.
Yeah.
You're gonna go fight with an
What?
axe.
What?
We're gonna talk about Vikings. You know what a Viking is? Yeah. All right, go watch shows, please.
I want to stay here for now.
No, go watch shows. Plus, the yogurt should be here. Instacart was dropped off. Go tell Sissy.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was.
Does the UPS guy deliver it?
No, the Instacart lady delivered it, not the UPS guy.
That I saw him. He drive it. Let's see. Instacart's here.
Mark said, "Hi, Aurora. Shut my door, please."
Mark.
Thank you.
Okay.
Love you. Okay, now I gotta go switch from, we had to make a Word document, guys. We have so much information that we wanted to talk about with you guys that we had to make a Word document so that we could keep some type of structure to the show.
Sorry.
We're Vikings today, by the way, hence the makeup. Drawing runes on your face is a lot harder than I thought it would be. I had to like wash this off and put it back on because it was too thick and looked silly.
Yeah, I tried to fix it and then I gave up. But yeah, I love the hairstyle and everything. You definitely put more effort into this.
So all I did on this side, so I don't have very long hair, and so there's not a whole lot of like creative things I could have done with it, but I took ponytails and like put them upwards so they're now on top of my hair, brought them up, and then I did a couple braids. There's a braid I pinned back and a braid here. I was like, you know what? That's good enough. What else? You know?
Yeah, that
I'm
looks
sure.
cool. Do you know what the runes mean that you put on your face?
I do not. Do you?
No, it does look actually really similar, the one you have above your eye, to
Mhm.
the Bluetooth symbol, which is actually a
Do
Viking
too.
robe. So I don't know what it means, but it's cool.
All right, go. Shut the door.
I know.
Yeah, no, I kind of looked up like reference pictures and then I just went with an easy method because I know a lot of them, especially for like the shield maidens, they have all the black on. I was like, if I try that and it doesn't work out, then I have to wash it all off and do it again. I was like,
Like,
I'm gonna keep it simple. And I did put some like dark eyeshadow on, but I still kept it simple.
yeah, I was scared to put the ash around my eyes. I was gonna try to do the eyeshadow thing, but I didn't want to blind myself by accident.
With eyeshadow, you won't blind yourself with eyeshadow.
No, with ashes from a fire because I didn't have eyeshadow.
True. Maybe. I don't know about that. You could get ash like if you're by a bonfire and it flies in your eye, that's not pleasant.
Yeah, but anyways, here we are, and yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna. What are we gonna start talking about? I mean, the
Well, I'm going to go ahead. Let me just introduce the
oh,
podcast. So, hey, everybody who's here. This is another episode of Call Me Jess. Q is my official host, co-host moving forward. So we're going to come up with a lot of we hope to come up with a lot of fun shows for you that you guys will like. This podcast is based on exploration. And what I mean by that is like no topics are off limit. We are just going to find something that we're drawn to. We're gonna dive into it. Kind of like today, this episode is going to be on Norse mythology and Vikings. They kind of go hand in hand. So we wanted to make it fun. Why we kind of dressed up to the vibe, did our hair, did our makeup, and just here we are. Um, with that, we have a lot of information, so we're gonna try and like share it with you, taking turns and whatnot. But we do encourage you guys to ask questions and get involved. And if this conversation takes us in a different direction, that's fine. It's not off limits. We're just gonna have fun with it.
yeah, yeah, this will be fun. And I think Vikings were amazing explorers, so we're gonna explore the topic kind of like them, just sort of sailing off into the ocean, sometimes recklessly, don't exactly know where you're going, but there might be better shores, and we'll find some interesting things along the way.
That's how you discover. You just get on
Yeah,
a boat and go. Where are we going? I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there.
totally.
Hi,
So,
Bonnie.
hey, Bunny.
La,
So,
la. I gotta
um,
get I have to jump between. Also, I think we might be a little bit delayed for you guys also. I don't know if it's as bad as it was last time, but if you ask a question and we answer it, you might not hear it right away. Give us a little delay to answer it. Give us a little time to answer it because it's most likely we're gonna catch your question and we will make sure we answer it. It might get to you later.
yeah, so we're just gonna go with the flow. And one of my passions is mythology in general, but I love Norse mythology. It's such a rich tapestry of history. I don't know if you love mythology or just fantasy in general. A whole lot of fantasy tropes actually originated or had interesting um, primordial sort of stories with Norse mythology. So elves, dwarves, magic, wizards. There's a lot of the sort of themes in Norse mythology. And I think it's really cool.
I know. I'm excited to jump into this topic, but I wanted to make it more fun too. We didn't want to like drone on about boring things. We wanted to make it entertaining. And we put together a little sheet of all the information we have. So we're gonna kind of let's just like we have so much, so I want to jump right into it. And we're gonna start with Q. You want to have it up too, because when I stop and give you the floor, you need to know where I leave off so we could try and keep up with each other.
Right. Right.
But we're going to start off with Norse gods and what they represent. So let's get into that. Of course, we're going to start it off with Odin, who is the All Father. He is king of the gods, ruler of Asgard, and the ultimate wise old man with a flair for drama. He represents wisdom, knowledge, war, and poetry. And he gave up one of his eyes for wisdom. So dedication right there. He got two ravens. My Viking pronunciation is going to be terrible, but I'm going to give it my best freaking effort right now. So the names of his ravens were Hugin, which means thought, represents thought, and Munin, which represents memory. So those ones are a little bit easier. We have some words in here that I am going to absolutely butcher, but I'll spell them for you if they get a little too complicated so that you guys at least so that we can be on the same page to some extent. So he had two ravens, Hugin that represents thought and Munin who represented memory. And at this point, they are considered ancient Norse spies. These ravens would spy.
Right.
We could just take our turns on the list and go from one god to the next. That way I'm not droning on for too long. And then,
No, that's perfect. I just wanted to say I love ravens and crows, and I think it's interesting how they thought of them as sort of like messengers of the gods, or like that there was like the sort of Odin might have been watching you if you saw a raven, and that was like a good omen, not necessarily a bad thing.
yeah.
But yeah, I love the different connotations that take on the natural world and how they fit it into their mythology. But yeah, the next god you might have heard about, Thor, the thunder god. Of course, he's big in Marvel, and the Marvel adaptation is different, but it's still like fairly accurate, and I think it's cool that it's still sort of such a big part of pop culture. But yeah, you know him as a big hammer swinging guy, and thunder bringing protector of mankind. He was also the god of feasts. And I just read recently that a lot of farmers and people who, made living off of the land, they would worship Thor in order to get a better harvest. So it kind of depends on where your position was in like Norse society, but you would sort of pray to whatever deity coincided with or that would bring prosperity, or what you cared about in life. So a lot of what you hear about like warriors going to Valhalla and stuff, that was their destiny. They were a warrior, they were destined to die in battle. But Thor wasn't all about battle. A lot of this is just in the stories you hear about a lot of war and struggle, but like Viking society and mythology wasn't all about that. But anyways, he represents strength, protection, storms, and fertility. And little fun fact here, Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, was so powerful it could flatten mountains, but he needed a special belt and gloves just so he could wear it. It wasn't enough just to be worthy, I guess.
I think Thor is like one of my favorite gods just because of the way that I don't know many people, but there is a show on, it's a German show, I believe, on Netflix called Ragnarok. And it's not, have you ever watched that? It's not super well known, but I watched it and it's really, really good. And I think they try to stick to like the mythology behind it a little more in depth than some of the other shows. I've also watched Vikings. Vikings is amazing.
Yeah.
In Vikings, though, we're actually focused on the Vikings and they talk about the gods, but we don't meet the gods. Now, with Ragnarok, it is about Thor and Loki and the giants and all of that. It's a lot of fun. So it's a show that I do recommend. Thank you. It is foreign, would it be German? Shut the door. But it's a really good watch. Like I would highly suggest it.
Yeah, I gotta check that one out.
So moving on from Thor, of course, that opens the door for Loki. We're going to talk about Loki now, who is known as the trickster. Loki is a chaotic wild card. I'm sure he's represented as a chaotic wild card across pretty much any platform that does any type of representation for him. Within Norse mythology, is he a god? Is he a giant? Or is he a little bit of both? Maybe he's absolutely all of the above. So with that, Loki he's a character that you love to hate, but you also hate to love. Like he will challenge your morals, your moral compass. He represents mischief, chaos, but he also represents transformation. So not all things are bad. But a fun fact about Loki is Loki once turned into a mare, and yes, that's the female horse, and gave birth to an eight-legged horse named. I'm gonna try this, guys. Ready? Sleipnir. Don't quote me. Sleipnir. And that horse became Odin's bride. So family reunions are probably a blast. Interesting.
It's wacky. Yeah, some of these jokes that Loki puts on the other pantheon, the other gods, it seems like he's sort of the butt of it, or it's not how I would do a practical joke because it he seems like he's definitely going through a lot of turmoil here. But
That was something new that I learned about Loki, though. I didn't know. I've never heard the mythology behind him turning into a horse to get pregnant and then give birth to a horse that then became Odin's horse. Like that's I didn't know that. That was new to me. I was like, that's definitely something that I have to include in this because that's interesting. So
yeah, these YouTube pranksters, they got to take a page out of Loki's book because he has commitment. That's how you prank someone. You got to turn yourself into a horse and give birth to a little horse baby. I don't know. Anyways, next one, Freya.
somebody in the comment,
Oh,
Leafy, I don't know if I pronounce it that way. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. My pronunciation on everything is going to be a challenge today. But he said Loki was his favorite, and I love Loki. That's what I'm saying. Like he will challenge your moral compass, but you can't hate him. You can hate him sometimes, but you can't truly hate him. I love the mischievous like spirit that he has, and I think deep down Loki is good.
yes. Yeah, and there's something about that trickster archetype that I think is really interesting. Like it takes someone who's like willing to just throw away all rules and norms and like expected behavior to really like show some of the weird, interesting parts of this world we live in, I think. But yeah, Loki definitely a character. And the next goddess, actually, one of my favorites, Freya, the goddess of love and war, and she was like the ultimate multitasker. Um, like I said, goddess of love, but also beauty, fertility, battle, and death. So there's a lot of magic that came from her, and warriors, and people who were hoping for uh, a son or a daughter would worship Freya. And fun fact, actually, she rides a chariot pulled by cats, which is pretty dang cool.
Yeah, that is so like, come on, seriously. I love that. That's a fun little fact. I like that. I love these fun facts because they're genuinely for to me, I find them fun, but I am very drawn to Norse mythology and Vikings and that whole era anyways. So that's one of the reasons why I was like, this episode will be a blast. And then like just have fun with it and get all the silly little like information that you can look up, whatever we could find. Obviously, I wasn't there at least like this. I don't think I wasn't there to actually experience any of it, so we're learning everything by what we hear, what we see, and what we can research. And I don't know, I
Yeah.
love the idea of keeping it fun.
Oh yeah, one more thing about Freya. I don't know. I play this game called Age of Mythology, and one of the cool mythological units you can get through Freya is the Valkyrie, which is an awesome female warrior who, I guess, during Viking times would worship Freya. I think they're kind of a mythological thing. I'm not sure if that was if they were actually,
I've heard
but
of them. Yeah, I think
yeah,
at this point all of this is, well, I mean there's been archaeologists and whatnot. They're in here somewhere. I know there's archaeology. Well, we'll get to there. We're not going to jump ahead.
right. Oh yeah, let's not get too off task. So I think, yeah, who are we on next? The
So moving on. So then I was unaware of this god actually, but we're moving on to Freyr, who is the god of peace and prosperity. He is also Freya's twin brother. Um, he represents peace, prosperity, and sunshine. So he's a very positive god. And he's what is that? Twin brother. And he's the god of fertility and good harvests. I don't know too much about him outside of that because I actually wasn't aware that he even existed until today when I was doing some more research on what we were going to talk about. However, a fun little fact about him is that he gave away his magical sword to impress a giantress, that's what I said, giantess,
Uh-huh.
um, that he was crushing on, and it worked.
Hmm. But you might regret
However,
it.
the fun little fact ends with but he might regret it whenever Ragnarok rolls around. I am on one today. I think I'm overthinking the pronunciation, so like normal words aren't coming out right, but bear with me, guys.
Good.
So yeah, that's Freyr for you. I didn't know he existed. If you didn't, now you do, and if you did, you're there. You go. You have some information on him.
Yeah. There's a whole cast of characters here. And honestly, I think the Norse gods have like a lot more sort of interesting personality compared to some of the other pantheons, but that's just my favorite. And oh, really quick, Liffy Green said something interesting here. Part of this mythology, it's a pictorial language of old, and the horse is depicted as being a boat builder that has 8 legs, referring to their war slash raid ships or boats. That is pretty cool. Yeah, so a whole lot of imagery had to do with boats, and I mean they had a huge. I mean their whole sort of society was built around exploring and finding land to conquer and stuff like that. We'll go into a little bit more of the uh, aspects of their civilization that I don't think it's talked about as much, but yeah, I think that's cool, especially the imagery relating to horses and boats, because there's a lot of that didn't really connect before, but boats were sort of like this mode of transportation that they really connected to horses, I guess, which is kind of cool.
So moving along to the next god, it's your turn.
Oh yes, Heimdall. Uh, awesome character. He's the Watchman, and he's the ever vigilant guardian of Bifrost, which is this cool rainbow road that led to Asgard. So sort of this road that led into their godly dimension, and he represents protection and foresight because he could see everything. He was this sort of he connected these universes, but I guess he was sort of like outside of space and time, kind of, so he could see like the whole picture. And he can, oh, here's a fun fact, he can hear grass growing, so like he has this like super in tune sense to the natural world that I think is cool.
Fun little facts. They're
Oh,
fun.
I missed it. The next page here. Fun fact, Heimdall can hear. Oh, wait, I said that.
Yeah, you did. You
Yeah,
just did the fun.
I thought I missed a
Is
part.
our page like separated because it went on to the next one? Yeah. Okay, so the next god that we want to talk about is Balder, known as the Shiny One. Balder is the golden boy of Asgard, literally and figuratively. Everyone loves him. He represents light, purity, and joy. And a fun little fact about Balder is his death is one of the key events leading to Ragnarok. And you can blame Loki for that one. Loki.
Right. He was like the perfect little child of Asgard, and yeah, things went to went to crap when he died. But yeah, there's some really interesting stories there, and maybe we'll get into Ragnarok a little later. But another person that's a big part of the story is Hel, which is the queen of the underworld.
I know her.
Yeah, ruler of Helheim, which is like a whole separate realm other than Asgard, but um, it's the realm of the dead. And she's also Loki's daughter, and has a half dead, half alive tribe. So she's sort of yeah, in charge of like these, in charge of death or the in between.
Not quite zombies, but not quite alive.
Right. I think they called them whites or rights or something. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but yeah, they had some really cool creatures, including some undead ones in their mythology. And cool little fun fact here: her name literally inspired the word hell, but the realm isn't exactly what you think of as hell. Not all fiery pits and stuff. It's just a bit dreary and cold. Not a place you'd want to be, but maybe not quite the hell we know.
Right. Not quite as extreme. So moving on from hell, we get to a god named, I don't know if it's Tyr or Tyr, it's Tyr. And he is the god of war and justice. So he's considered brave, and he will sacrifice his hand to bind Fenrir,
Mhm.
which is a giant wolf. He represents law, justice, and heroic sacrifice. So like extra, not just sacrifice, like heroic extra. I'm going to put you before myself to save you type of like vibe. A fun little fact about Tyr, uh, his his handless vibe is a permanent reminder not to trust wolves, especially the mythical kind.
Right.
The sneaky little. Mm-hmm.
They're freaky little things. Yeah, and this was like a not just any old wolf. Yeah, giant wolf, Fenrir, and like a dire wolf. And it's interesting to think about. Those might have actually existed during the Nordic times, or some some large, very large wolves that are probably
Larger wolves. I mean,
yeah.
even now, like larger than we. It's possible. I mean, that there's just an average wolf back then is bigger than the wolves that we consider average now. Who knows? It was a really long time ago.
Nordic times. Yeah, and a lot of what we know about this, it's interesting. They didn't actually have they wrote things down, but they didn't actually write a whole lot of these religious traditions down. Most of it was just passed down through oral tradition. So um it's not 100% sure like how they worshipped all these gods, but there's a lot of interesting stories that probably changed along the eons, but the essence of it is still there. And I think that's part of what makes it so magical. But here we go. Uh, I think the next one is Njord, if I'm pronouncing that right.
That sounds actually real. That sounds like it's probably right. Probably.
And Njord was the god of the sea, and he had a penchant for wealth and calm waters. And it was actually the father of both Freya and Freyr. So there's kind of a theme there, but he represents seas, fishing, and prosperity, which is probably where most of the prosperity for the Norse people came from. But it's interesting. Njord means giantess. It means he, no, he married a giantess, Scotty, but the relationship, it didn't work out because she hated the sea and he hated the mountains. So it was like these sort of star-crossed lovers, and ultimate long distance relationship fail in the end. But one of those tragic stories.
So now, actually, you guys, I just talked about him, the hand guy, Fenrir, the big bad wolf. He is not technically a god, but he's a giant wolf and Loki's kid.
Oh, sounds like Loki gave birth to a few different animals, I guess.
He's a key player in Ragnarok, and he represents chaos and destruction,
Hmm.
like father, like son. Um, a fun little fact about Fenrir is he's bound by an unbreakable ribbon made from weird ingredients like a cat's footsteps and a fish's breath. Don't ask how they collected that. I have no answers for you. Um, was that the last god? That was the last god. Okay.
Yeah.
God.
Last
He's not a
one.
god. He's just the child of a
Yeah.
god, the son of a
They,
god.
they have a whole pantheon, but those are the main characters. And yeah, it's if you haven't read Norse mythology before, there's like a whole wealth of good stuff out there, and amazing TV shows and games and stuff. So I'd really recommend you guys check that out, especially the Vikings show on
Vikings is amazing. I
yeah,
love the show. I love it.
maybe not the
And then
most
they made
historically
another
accurate.
one
Yeah.
that was supposed to be prior. So like I haven't watched that one yet, but it's another Viking show. What is I can't think of what it's called, but it's like 100 years before the Vikings show that was originally on the History Channel. They're all on Netflix now, I think.
Right.
Um, I watch all kinds of shows like that. I'm trying to think of the other one with Uhtred, whatever show that is with Uhtred. I love that one a lot too.
Yeah.
Kingdom. I'm blanking
Um,
on names here, but these are still shows that I get into them. I'm drawn to these type of shows, and especially shows that make it like interesting and entertaining. So they put the facts of what they know and they blend the myths in, but they make it fun and entertaining, and you kind of fall in love with the characters. And then they kill some of the characters, and then you're mad for a little while, but you get over it and you fall in love with new characters.
yeah, yeah, I think it's really cool, and I think it follows the tradition of this sort of oral mythology. Is it sort of it changes every time the story is told, so it might not be the same as the original or as close to the original stories as we have, but there's it's part of like this ongoing narrative, and I think that's why Vikings are so interesting because they're it's kind of like a moldable archetype, and yeah, I love Vikings. But
Well,
there's a few things that we get wrong about Vikings, right? In
I'm
pop culture.
sure.
So, I mean, one of the biggest things is that they don't actually wear those horn helmets, which was disappointing to me as a kid because I thought that looked cool. But yeah, not exactly what they look like.
Just like regular helmets for battle to actually protect their head, not make them look cool, like
Right.
armor.
Yeah, most of the stuff they wore was pretty functional, and they didn't have the most resources, so they just worked with what they had, and I think they had a cool style.
So I don't know. Vikings are probably typically represented as like being dirty all the time because they're out, they're doing battle, they're traveling, they're on the sea all the time. But something that I learned doing my research is that Vikings actually were very much into like their hair and their beards and their cleanliness, um, grooming, things like that. This is where I started to get into earlier that there's actually archaeologists that have found combs, tweezers, and like ear cleaners buried within like Viking burial sites. So these are things they took with them. These are things that meant something to them, which is interesting. So they weren't just raiding villages. They had to look good. Like they had to do their hair, do their makeup, make sure they smelled good before they went and raided the villages. So, you know,
Right.
they cared.
Yeah. I heard this interesting phrase, like usually history is written by the victors, but the Vikings didn't really have a writing system where they had a sort of writing system, but they didn't really write everything down. They had runes and stuff. But a lot of the history we have from Vikings actually comes from some of the people they conquered. And it sort of paints a picture of Vikings as being like these barbarians or these warlords that, yeah, they did a lot of raiding, and it wasn't the most like ideal society by today's standards, but they really weren't as war loving as a lot of the depictions of them say they are. So I think that's interesting. Oh yeah, here before I forget, Leafy Green actually said something cool. The cat's footsteps is stealth. The fish's death um represents to a person being air breathing, and stealth to death through drowning.
So I'm not getting updated comments. I'm gonna go out of the live and then go back in.
Oh shoot.
Oh, look, there it is. Now I see. Mark commented, Leafy, Mark. Yeah, see, none of these were popping up for me. Bonnie.
Shoot. Yeah, sorry for not getting to you right away. It's a little bit of a lag here, but I'll
We're
try to keep
traveling
up
through the multiverse.
all things are connected. Yeah,
Yes, yes. I think because he's responding to when we were talking about the gods, the god that can hear grass growing, and commenting for that. Yes, all things are connected to nature, your roots. I believe that till today, and I feel like the Vikings may have been. Obviously, you think that's a different life. They were living a much different life than what modern society is living now. And if you're out in nature, with if you're out in nature the way that they were, if you're out, you're connecting more. And I feel like you're going to have an easier time connecting to the earth and all things around that. This is why the Vikings believed in a lot of different things within their gods, and they had a lot of different, they were very creative with their imagination because their imagination is what fueled them. Like it's what they had. They had a lot of time to kind of sit with it and put things together and figure out like, hey, this makes sense. Rather than sitting in front of the TV watching CNN tell you what you should be thinking and how you should be behaving and what you should be doing.
Right. Yeah, it's really cool. And they were very creative people. And I think part of that connection to the natural world is what led them to be such successful seafaring people. Because, at the time they were using relatively primitive boats. Like they didn't have the sort of triangular sails that help you steer better. Um, and like, yeah, certain things, they didn't have compasses, but they were still able to navigate like extremely large distances. The
Just
first,
using the placement of the sun. Like
yeah,
that's pretty cool.
and the stars, and they built stories
Mhm.
around it. They didn't know exactly why it was working. And that's part of why all these interesting mythological stories came out. But they came up with a system that made sense to them, and it helped them navigate the natural world. And yeah, it doesn't get brought up. I mean, enough, I don't think. But Christopher Columbus didn't really discover the New World. It was Vikings like thousands of years ago, and I think that's a bit more impressive. But
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah,
Give me a moment. Let me kind of catch my bearings.
no problem. Just reading through comments here.
Okay, so I want to move on to the subject where we talk about like Vikings seem to have had like a good sense of humor. When you're with people consistently, you're either going to be miserable or you can make it fun. And a part of that is what they had called, I don't know again if it's called flighting or flitting, but it's basically where they would roast each other through rap battles. People still do that today, but that, yeah, have a good time, sit down and just I don't know what you're roasting each other about, whether or not you have a good axe arm or not. I don't know, but that's a thing that they did,
That's really cool. Lighting, huh? Ancient rap battle. That sounds amazing.
right?
Be cool to witness.
Sitting on a boat, traveling, bored out of your mind. Like been nothing surrounded by nothing but sea for like 100 days now. You got to
Right.
get creative.
Yeah.
Speaking of the sea, and the imagination and their creativity and the way that they were connected to things, the Vikings actually feared a lot of supernatural beings. They had a very, very deep belief in different monsters, so to speak.
Yeah, lots of really cool mythological creatures. And I think that's there's a lot of other fantasy and other religions like paganism that draws a lot on Norse mythology. I
Oh
think
yeah,
because they have
paganism is very connected to Norse. Yeah. Hmm.
right. I think because they have such a rich tapestry of different characters and creatures, and you could really fit in Norse mythology, I think, to a lot of different belief systems, even today. So I think it's still relevant for a lot of people who do actually worship some of these gods today. So it's kind of cool.
Some of those creatures, specifically, you got the Draugr, which is this makes me think of Game of Thrones. They would be zombie warriors that would haunt the living. So if anybody's watched Game of Thrones, how that you're always talking about, you know, winter is coming and they're so worried about what comes with winter. I don't want to say anything else in case you haven't watched it, but that's what I imagine. That is what I envision when I think of a Draugr.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They kind of came up with the original idea of the zombie. And it was frightening because it could come out to from the sea. You weren't even safe on your boat in the middle of the ocean. They could still come up and grab you.
Get you. No, you got to think they spend a lot of time on in those ships. So, like, obviously, it's dark out at night. You're looking up. It's pitch black. You're surrounded by water that looks like black water. Your imagination is going to really get the best of you then.
Right.
They believed in a lot of like sea creatures and sea serpents and things of that also. So,
Right. Yeah, and they must have saw some crazy stuff out there in the middle of the ocean. I don't know if they saw any actual sea serpents, but maybe they saw a giant squid or something. That would have been freaky.
yeah. Especially if you didn't have the ability to like to see what's in the ocean the way we do now. We are only aware of those things because we've been able to explore and it's been brought to our attention. But can you imagine seeing a giant squid and not having any clue what is in the ocean aside from what is surfaced? Oh, oh my
Right.
God, that is a sea serpent.
Terrifying. Yeah. Jeez. Oh man. Oh, here's another interesting thing. You might have heard of berserkers from Norse mythology or Viking myths, but they're actually real Viking warriors, and they would enter like this crazy frenzied rage, like they were getting possessed. And some people actually think they were taking hallucinogenic mushrooms, which
Probably, come on.
yeah,
Probably.
crazy way to go into battle. I think there's this type of mushroom. It makes you feel like it's like the Mario mushroom, the ones with the white spots on them. Amanita muscaria, I think. And yeah, it does make you feel like a giant, apparently. It gives you this exaggerated sense of self. So I can imagine some big burly warrior taking this and feeling even more uh big and intimidating. But yeah,
Running and
uh,
screaming at you with crazy eyes, like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go the other way. Fast.
right. No reasoning with this guy. He's already in a berserker mode.
I mean, honestly, if you have to go into battle, you're living that lifestyle. The best way to go into battle would be on some hallucinogenic mushrooms,
Right.
in my
Yeah.
opinion. You're gonna have a good old time.
Yeah. And I think to them it wasn't the worst thing. If you died in battle for a Viking warrior, that meant you were going to Valhalla. So it's they I thought it was interesting where it this passage I read about like how they actually felt about their beliefs. It wasn't they sort of all sort of felt like they had this own special place in the natural world, like they had a destiny or a fate, but they weren't necessarily like beholden to it. They wouldn't like cower or run away from their fate. They would sort of run to meet it head on. So that was the whole, dying in war thing, why that was so honorable to Vikings, I think.
Makes sense. And the full belief that if you die in battle, you're going to Valhalla. And Valhalla is represented as like you want to be there. You want to go there. That's where you want to end up.
Right. It's like paradise. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let me catch up on some of these comments. Um, Jay said that we were talking about the zombies coming out of the ocean. He said it reminds him of Minecraft.
Oh, right. The
You
drown.
got zombies, the water zombies, like called drowns. I guess they're called drowns. The water zombies. Leafy was talking about how psychedelics they definitely took psychedelics of all sorts, which I have no doubt. Like it just makes sense. Why would they're out in nature all the time? Like they lived in huts or tent, whatever they built. They were little. They weren't living in houses the way people do today, where so many people spend so much time indoors. They were one with nature.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. I'm
Right.
I'm not sure if this coincides with North mythology. I think it was around that region at the time, but they think maybe the origin of Santa Claus might have been tied to some old mystic or and some little natural healer in the forest that would go around giving gifts of mushrooms. And I think that's where some of the color scheme came from. Maybe he had like a hat with a little
Santa Claus
snake
passing out
ball in it.
psychedelic mushrooms. Like, here,
Yeah.
you're gonna have a great freaking day.
Yeah. I don't know if that's true necessarily, but it's a good story.
Now, Mark said that he believes that shrooms helped humans expand, and I do believe in that. I've never personally experienced shrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, but I've done a lot of research on them, and I'm very interested in the idea behind them, the ideology. Anyways, so I do, based on what I've read, I think that it's definitely had a positive impact on expanding your mindset, your consciousness in general. So that's cool.
Yeah.
God, nature put those shroomies there for a reason. He sure did. She sure did. They sure did.
Yeah.
The original Santa Claus is Coca-Cola. Yep.
Shoot. I got that wrong. Yeah. Oh man.
All right, I got to jump out of the chat real quick, guys. So I'll catch up if need be. But we gotta stay on track. We have so much information, like so much. We want to just keep a good flow to it. Where are we? I don't even know.
I'm gonna bounce around a little bit, but I think we're mostly on the same page here.
That's fine. You just go somewhere and I'll bounce off of wherever you take us.
Yeah. So we're just talking about Valhalla, but that was really only the warriors that were striving to go to Valhalla. Not all Vikings went to Valhalla, and you'd have to die in battle, and then that's where Valhalla was in Odin's hall, so you were literally sitting with the gods if you died in battle. But the rest, pretty much everyone else went to hell, and not the most ideal afterlife, but I guess they didn't really have this sort of concept of this great reward you would get in the afterlife. It was just this sort of place you went when you died, and it wasn't necessarily all of you. They had a few different sort of competing ideologies. Probably different people believed in different things. Like the warriors believed in going to Valhalla, but ordinary people were just like, okay, you just go somewhere else when you die. But they also believed you could get reincarnated, especially into your own family. They don't think you would be reincarnated as anyone or as like a frog or something necessarily, but you would be
A
reborn.
frog, Q, a
Yeah.
frog.
Yeah.
Okay.
But into your own family. So if you were named after an ancestor, they thought part of their soul would literally get reincarnated into your body. So I think that's cool. They had a whole lot of sort of competing different ideas for what happened when you die, but they weren't necessarily, at odds with each other. It kind of depends on who you were and, what you thought.
Since we're jumping into talking about Valhalla and hell and all of that, why don't we jump into the nine realms that the Vikings believed in? Because it kind of just flows right into the conversation. Um, so with that, the in Norse mythology, there is a belief that there were nine different realms, and a lot of them you hear a lot about Valhalla. Now you guys heard a little bit about hell, but I won't say significantly, but there's more. So starting off, as we've already talked about, you have Asgard, which is where the gods like Odin and Thor and Frigg, this is where they lived, this is where they were from, this is also where Valhalla was. We've already kind of touched base with that. So nothing, too exciting about that. Moving on, but then there's what they called Midgard, which to us would be like Earth. That's the human realm. The only difference for them, the only difference with their Earth in their mind is that Earth was surrounded by masses of water, and the water was there of ocean to protect them from anything. But also in that water lived a serpent called, bear with me, ready? Jormungandr.
Oh,
Jormungandr.
I think that was pretty good. I wouldn't be able to tell you, but that sounded good.
And that is known as the Midgard serpent. So they believe that the oceans that protected Midgard also housed a serpent
Hmm.
that would, I guess the serpent was protecting Midgard. So it was protecting
Right.
them. That's a big part of how they stayed safe.
Right. And I think this is also part of the, explanation why you didn't necessarily see this realm or you couldn't get to it. Like even if you wanted to meet the gods in your mortal life, you'd have to get through this,
Giant serpent.
giant serpent. Yeah. It's pretty dang cool. And yeah, just trying to catch up here.
I know you're like trying to figure out where we are. I'm
Yeah.
on the part of the sheet where I put all of the about the nine realms in general, number 3. Because
Um,
I went over Asgard because we already talked about that. So I kind of just briefed over that one. And then I just
right.
talked about Midgard. So you would be on number 3.
Okay. Oh yeah. So the next realm is Vanaheim, which would be the realm of the Vanir guards. So those Vanir gods, they're sort of a separate subsect of gods that didn't necessarily live in Asgard. But the gods like Njord, Freya, and Freyr they lived there. And it was sort of the home of the natural gods. So the gods that would control natural forces on this world, they didn't live in Asgard. They lived in this sort of parallel realm, Vanaheim. And yeah, it's just such a rich tapestry of different worlds they live in. And some of them have mythical creatures, right? So um, I don't know how to pronounce this one, but Jotunheim, It's the realm of the giants.
That's kind of what I would go with. Yeah. We're not Vikings, so we don't talk the way they talk. They had a bit of an accent. I cannot mimic the Viking accent very well.
Cool.
So we're just doing the best we can.
Yeah. Well, the frost giants lived there and mountain giants. So they had different varieties of giants, but they were all very formidable and scary. Luckily, they lived in their own realm. This icy, rugged wilderness with towering mountains, deep forests, and the giants they were fighting the gods. So the gods didn't necessarily spend all their time dealing with humanity. They had their own troubles to deal with, like fighting hordes of giants.
And fun fact with that one, Loki, even though he resides in Asgard, is originally from Jotun.
Oh, right. Yeah, he's from that giant realm, which is interesting. You said Loki was? Oh, yeah.
Loki, yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually in the Marvel movies too. He comes
Yeah,
from.
because Loki's like part god, part, well, giant. Well,
Mhm.
there's history there.
And let's see. Mark mentioned hip hop gem called Battle for Asgard, which sounds really cool. Or
Yeah.
Asgard. I don't know. Um, yeah, there's a lot of cool media out there. I would play it, but I don't want to get our stream copyrighted.
Plus, I think on Zoom, like I've tried to play music through Zoom before, and you guys could never hear it. I don't know. There is a secret to it, but like it doesn't come through very well. Okay, so another one. We're on 5. So we're on the 5th realm, and this is known as Elfheim. And I'm saying Elfheim, even though it's Alfheim, because this is the realm of light elves. So the light elves, which are described as beautiful and radiant beings, reside here. This is their realm. They are, I lost my place. Hold on. They are considered to be bright, ethereal, like associated with like creativity, art, music, nature, and they are considered to be divine helpers of the gods. So they sound like positive little cute little things, little elves. I need some of them.
Yeah, they were the good-looking elves, right? Because light elves, it definitely implies the existence of dark elves, but we'll get there. The other cool creature you might have heard about lived in Svartalheim, which was the realm of the dwarves, and also master craftsmen and smiths. So the dwarves were like the best sort of craftsmakers. They're better than any human, and they sort of lived underground. This probably familiar to you if you know about dwarves, but they're pretty similar to fancy dwarves you know of. But in the Norse mythology, they made Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, and also Odin's spear, which I didn't hear about, but it's got a cool name too, Gungnir. And cool little fun fact: the dwarves are known for their greed, but they have unmatched skill in crafting magical items. So they weren't just really well crafted; they were magical, like Thor's hammer.
But they sound like they would be hard to deal with. They
Yeah,
sound like they would be problem makers. Just say,
yeah, they're stubborn creatures. Probably hard to
yeah,
get to do what you want them to.
got to kind of like give them what they want to get anything in return. And they'll take more than what it's worth because they're greedy little things.
Right.
And moving on to the 7th realm, Niflheim.
Oh yeah.
This is the realm of ice and mist. So this is where frost giants and some of the dead reside. It is a cold, dark, and misty realm that existed even before the creation of the entire world. So this existed before anything else existed. And a fun little fact about this place is it is home of the well. Whew, okay, here's one. Herfer Gelmer. Hverglmir, from which icy rivers flow, and they feed the world's tree, Yggdrasil.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Just so you know. Now you know.
Let's see. I wonder if I can get a picture of the world tree up here. It's a really cool concept, I think, and just awesome imagery. Um, but yeah, they had the idea of the natural world sort of sprouting from this gigantic mythological tree. And if you know what I'm talking about, it looks pretty cool. But all the different realms are sort of part of this tree. Here, I got it right here. Let's see. I'm just gonna share my screen really quick. Try not to get too distracted. Here.
Okay. Allow.
Thank you. So here we go. Can you see anything? Oh, here we go.
There it comes. There it is.
Yeah, so here's Yggdrasil, the tree of life. And you can kind of see down here we've got Nilfheim, and that's where the spring would sort of come forth. It's actually should be underneath a little bit lower where the roots come out, but uh then you have all these realms that are a part of it. And Asgard is sort of up in heaven near the canopy of the tree. Midgard, where we all live, is sort of in the center of the tree where the branches are. And then you have off to the side these different mythological realms, Alfheim and Jotunheim, where the elves and the giants live. But it's just kind of cool how they string everything together. They're different realms, kind of disconnected from each other, but they're all part of this grand tree of life, which I think is some amazing imagery.
Everything is connected. Mark said Loki was Loki, the Asgard of Asgard. I agree.
And yeah, in Norse mythology, if you hear anything about Loki, yeah, he's definitely up to mischief all the time. And also Thor was just not really the most he wouldn't really come in and save the day. He would just come in and fuck shit up, basically. His whole thing was just smashing stuff with his hammer, whether it really was a good idea or made sense or not. It's what he did.
Smash first, ask questions later.
Yeah. Let's see. Before I go on to the next realm, I just got a message from Leafy. And one thing to note, though, is though experiences that become spoken into legend became names of a quote unquote God, that would be a representation of admiration based on through history from thousands of years. Depicted as God or quote unquote God are different. And I say this respectfully. Locally found a different way that was outside the box mentality. He was feared for his standing because without Loki at the time, the boats for wars or raids would have been much more difficult. And because Loki was a master builder, so they accepted his other insightfulness. As they could until Loki could not tolerate his own further thoughts and insights, and then go on his own journey to discover more and not stay stuck of mind. So yeah, that's really cool. Like all these characters have a whole lot of nuance to them,
They
and
have a lot of depth.
yeah. But yeah, thanks for saying that. Yeah, it's a lot of what we think of as like a god or like how we think of religion today was probably practiced entirely different back then. And really, we only have oral traditions to go on. So a lot of this is sort of guesswork, but still, I think the spirit of these stories survives.
We are on the eighth realm.
Yes. Oh, the realm of fire. And that is Muspelheim. And that's where the fire giants live. And it's a realm ruled by Surtur, who I think is also a fire giant. And it's a blazing, fiery realm. And it's set to be sort of the opposite of Nilfheim. the sort of icy realm where the ice and mountain giants live.
Which would make sense. You got the ice giants and now you got the fire giants.
Yeah, it all kind of balances out nicely on their world tree. But yeah, fun little fact, Surtur, who is a fire giant, is destined to lead the charge in Ragnarok, setting the world ablaze with his flaming sword. So he's kind of the entity that brings about Armageddon.
All right.
Okay.
Flaming sword. Take us out with a flaming sword. Ugh.
Yeah. Jeez.
So that moves us on to the ninth and the final realm that the Norse mythology discusses and shares with us, and that is Helheim, which we've already kind of discussed with you because it was in earlier conversations. But Helheim is the realm of the dead, and this is the dead who did not die in battle. This is where they go. They go to hell, but it's not the same hell that we think of, which is depicted in like modern society. There was no fire, there's no burning, there was no torture. It's just kind of like a sad and like gloomy place. It's just kind of like, well, you're dead now. This is where you go.
Mm-hmm.
And if you weren't here earlier, Helheim is actually ran by Hel, who is Loki's daughter.
Right.
It's not a place of punishment. It's like I said, it's kind of like
Yeah,
this is actually considering it to be like a waiting room for your soul. I guess until you're waiting to be reincarnated. So you kind of just hang out there. What we would potentially consider a limbo these days.
yeah, yeah, and it wasn't a punishment or yeah, just people just naturally believed they were going there, and it's yeah, it's interesting. I feel like there's other mythologies that have similar things, like Greek mythology with the fields of Elysium, and a lot of these sort of coincide. But I think it's pretty cool, and yeah, all these different realms they play into each other, and even if you haven't heard of them directly, you've definitely heard about beings who live there, like elves or
Yeah.
giants
Mhm.
and dwarves. So it's very much a part of the current psyche still. Really like infinite storytelling possibilities, and that's probably why there's so many cool Norse mythological stories, is because it was really anyone could make a story and just pass it down, and if it was interesting enough, people would keep on repeating it, and it sort of took a life of its own, and it still has that life. um
Trying to find, because we kind of jumped through a little bit. So I'm just finding my way back to get some fresh information because there's just so much information and we know a baseline, but I want to make sure that whatever I'm sharing with you is at least factual based on history. Factual, like fire swords taking out the entire universe.
hey,
Like I said, we're keeping it fun, and they were very, very creative beings, and I love that. I love the imagination and the potential that
mhm.
their creativity created. What,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, a lot of the ideas we have about magic came from these Norse mythological stories, and there were people who were actually like known to have like sort of magical powers, and they would travel from town to town. Um, but I don't know, like they had this interesting sort of belief, like runes had it's like actual physical magical power. When you would write runes onto things, it was actually calling an essence of that idea into being. So it's like that's kind of like where the modern idea of spells comes from a bit. And I don't know, I think it's cool that we have this interesting tapestry of stories to lean on.
So we just went through the Vikings and what they believed in, but we have a little tidbit in here that speaks on how we knew that they thought about worlds were inhabited by gods and goddesses, giants and giantesses, men, dwarves, and elves. but for the pagan Norse and other Germanic people, fate. Fate rather than will of the gods was what determined the course of events in the universe. And we still talk about fate today. Like, what is your fate? What is your destiny? So it just depends on, again, how we have different beliefs, different religions out there today. This is the same concept. They had different thought processes, different beliefs, and I guess if you want to call it like they're different religious beliefs based on their experiences and what they were taught.
Yeah, so it wasn't all monolithic, and so we're not saying all Vikings, but yeah, it was this sort of interconnected group of people, and it wasn't like a solid it's not like we're not talking like a country of people. This was like large groups of people across a very wide area. So um yeah, they definitely saw some amazing, interesting things, and they wove it into their stories.
I can imagine.
Yeah, living back then, it was a different universe, but it seems like
Right.
they,
Isn't it crazy to think that it's actually the same, like planet, everything? Like it's
yeah.
this world we live in now was also their world. It was just a different time. Um, I don't know why that seems so wild a thought to me, but like it is.
Right. And it's still it's like a something that still captures your imagination, even though it's like a completely different world. But I think it's because of this rich culture that they made. And it's unfortunate that we don't have like a really perfect history of the area. Like a lot of it's sort of guesswork, but more is being found out all the time. And um it's pretty cool. I was trying to get to some facts here, but I
Well, so kind of going back to flitting or flighting, how they would have like rap battles. I have a little more information on that, that it was
oh
more or
yeah,
less like they weren't rapping at each other, but they would go back and forth like a rap battle would go, but it was more like insult, creative insults turned into poetry is how it's described. So I got an example here actually, and it says, for example, they might call someone a maggot filled carcass or accuse them of being too weak to lift their own shield. And the goal was to outwit your opponent with sharp words and leave the crowd laughing. Same concept as a rap battle, but Viking
Viking style.
vibes.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Oh, hi Megan. Nice seeing you here.
Hi, Megan.
So, oh, I wanted to talk a little bit about the face paint and some of the stuff they wore
The
and
face paint.
style. Yeah. I tried being a really authentic using ashes, which apparently they use part of their face paint. I don't know how to exactly turn into a good pigment, so it just kind of looks like I rubbed a bunch of dirt on my face. But
I use
uh,
eyeliner. I was like,
yeah. But yeah, there's some competing theories like why they actually painted their face. It could have been just to like intimidate their enemies or just to make them look more fearsome. It could be like an allegiance or like a sort of marking that would connect them to a different tribe or group they were fighting for. But also interestingly, it's sort of like to protect them from evil spirits. It was like to ward off some bad juju
which is
during
the point
battle.
behind the runes and what they symbolize. I don't know what the runes
Right.
on my face symbolize, guys. If you do, tell me. But their
Yeah.
runes have meaning and protective qualities, and obviously, if you're living in that time in that era, you're going to know significantly more about runes than I do, and you were going to utilize them properly. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm interested in
Yeah.
learning more. Now, this kind of like I want to learn. I've
It's
been wanting to learn
interesting.
runes.
Yeah, actually, I saw like a really interesting video before. I can't remember the guy who made it, but it was like making the case that the sort of runic alphabet is actually way better suited for the English language than the alphabet we use. Like they have more sounds that make sense in the English language. Like they actually have a letter for th, and um, a lot of the sounds that we kind of have to mash together different letters to make. And it flows better. It just there's a case to be made that the runic alphabet should be brought back, but it definitely fits our style of speaking still. So it's kind of interesting that it's still usable today. And yeah, so those markings would be like a spell you put on as like a protection and to
Mhm.
ward off.
Do you ever read the book The Mortal Instruments? Any readers in here?
Oh,
There's a book series called The Mortal Instruments, and they use runes as spells and protective qualities and like magic and everything. It's pretty cool. I love that book series.
awesome.
Another fun little fact about Vikings is that they dyed their hair, especially the men. They would dye their hair using Lyle soap to get the blonde look because blonde was considered to be more attractive and to give off a higher status. So, yes, again, this goes back to they cared very much about how they looked and how they smelled, and it was like modern day Viking influencers.
Right. Yeah, and they would have tattoos and other really cool markings on their body. Maybe not necessarily how you'd seen it in pop culture, but they would tattoo symbols of the gods on them, like ravens, or they would put a dragon on them. Nidhogg, we didn't actually talk to. Yeah, but there's dragon. We didn't talk about that, but there's dragons in Norse mythology too. That was a dragon that was actually eating the tree of life, but pretty gnarly tattoo, I think, for the time.
I think most of us know that Vikings love to party. Like they love to celebrate, they love to drink their mead, which is where the horns, like they may not have worn horns on their head, but they did drink out of horns.
Right. Yeah, the
So,
perfect like goblet,
yeah.
drinking mead out of a horn sounds like a perfect Viking activity.
Now I've never tried mead, but I'm interested in trying it just to say that I've tried it, just to be like, yeah, I tried mead.
Yeah, and if you wanted to do that, you could make it almost the same way that they made it back in ancient Norse times. And all you need is honey, some yeast, and a big jug of to put the water and liquid and everything in. You just let it sit for a while. There's
Let it
guides
ferment.
online, but it's pretty dang simple to make your own mead if you wanted to do that. Or you could buy it at the store. They still sell mead. It might be a little harder to find, but you can get it.
Actually, there's like a place down local to me that it's a meadery.
Oh, cool.
So I have access to it. I got a bunch of just fun little facts. Like we talked about the big important stuff. We went over the gods. We went over what the gods represent. We went over some of the more popular Viking history. And now I just kind of have like, I want to keep it fun. I have little fun facts, things that you probably don't know. So one of those would be that the Vikings were very superstitious about their nails. Like they didn't believe that in trimming your nails too much because the clippings might end up being used to like
Oh, to
in
cast a
this sense, the
spell on
clippings
you,
were
or
used to build the ship Naglfar, which is a vessel made of dead men's nails that could carry giants into battle at Ragnarok.
wow.
So they
Oh,
had
geez.
some very interesting superstitions.
That's metal. Yeah, a ship made out of fingernails. Dang.
Yep. To carry giants into Ragnarok.
Damn.
I mean, I think we know that they use ravens for navigation, um, which is kind of cool. The ravens around here, the crows, they don't tell me anything. They just caw at me, and I'm just like, "Hi," caw
Right.
at me.
Yeah, I think that was one of the brilliant things they did too, is they would and part of their connection to the natural world is they would watch birds when they get close to shore or relatively close to shore, and they would follow the birds to some new destination maybe they couldn't find before, but they didn't necessarily know how to find this stuff, but they knew how to look for the signs and birds and stuff that would point them the way. And I'm sure they would thank Odin for the heads up.
For sure.
Um, what does the word Viking mean? I don't actually know, but let's try to find out. Um, it actually means their language. Um, Old Norse was the language, and Old Norse language Viking, it meant pirate raid, actually. So it's kind of a little bit of a slur maybe towards these people. They probably didn't call themselves pirate raiders, but other people did. And so I guess that's where we get the name Viking.
So Vikings did have what would be considered gender roles, but they were flexible. So typically the men were the ones that would go out and raid while the women could stay, farm and inherit the land. And they were even allowed to divorce their husbands back then, way back then. And I, as anybody who follows Viking or even watches the shows now, there's stories of shield maidens, which are Viking women who went hand in hand and fought with the men. So as much as like there may or may not have been like a general gender idea of how it should be, it wasn't set in stone.
Mhm. It's pretty cool. Sorry, I was just reading this other thing. Leafy, I don't know if your name has a Viking history, but I'm just reading about a guy named Leaf who was the first Viking ever to set foot in Greenland. So that's pretty cool. Um,
Oh, there's something in our paper about him actually.
oh, cool.
I gotta find it.
Yeah, so Eric the Red apparently he went to Greenland after being banished from Iceland, and that's when he went to found Greenland, which was
Yeah,
a bit of a misnomer, right? They called it Greenland on purpose because it wasn't a Greenland and not some place people would want to go, and they called their actual sort of paradise island Iceland. So like the place where they actually grew stuff was Iceland, and the place where you couldn't really grow anything was called
I
Greenland.
knew that. I remember learning about that like in elementary school. Obviously, they didn't teach the Vikings. I just learned that Iceland was green and Greenland was icy. So here it is, Leif Erikson. We had actually already discussed this earlier about how it was a Viking that discovered North America first. It was him. He's the one who discovered North America about 500 years before Columbus ever did.
Right. Oh yeah, and Erickson. Yeah, they would literally name themselves after their surname would be after their father. So his father was named Eric, so his name was Eric son.
Erickson.
Yeah.
Oh, that's creative.
Oh man. Apparently some of the days of the week are named after some um Nordic gods also. So probably makes sense in hindsight, but Thursday is actually named after Thor. It used to be Thor's Day.
Really? That's cool. I didn't know that. Cool. Okay, so also with Vikings, now this is something that again, if you watch the shows, you kind of see it that they would bury their dead in ships. They would put their dead into the ships and set them off into the ocean, because they were then the ships would carry them in their belief system. The ships would carry their dead to the afterlife.
Right.
So that was how
Like
they would say their final farewells and then sent them off to the afterlife.
right, there were pirate ships. I don't know if they did this all the time, but they would set them on fire sometimes too, which it's a kind of a interesting way to go into the afterlife on a burning ship. But yeah,
I mean, we have cremation now, so it's just different. You get cremated in like a warehouse now that's made for cremation.
right.
My family's not going to just set me ablaze at my funeral.
No,
Farewell, Jess, and then I burn me.
yeah, be a way to go. Um, Talking about some of the food they ate, it's kind of interesting. They actually kind of I don't know if they came up with the idea, but they're doing it way before it was trendy. Just eating 2 meals a day. So they didn't really have the classic breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
This is why they're often seen like feasting. Vikings are
Right.
known to have like big feasts. You sit down together in the grand hall or whatever, not a grand hall, in a room with everybody, and you just feast.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes
Feast
sense.
to break the fast. And yeah, they fasted a lot, but they also feasted a lot. So um they definitely some interesting foods. One of the reasons why we associate mead with Vikings is because they only had honey. That was the only sweetener they had access to. So they put it in like everything and they made their alcohol out of it too. But yeah. just some interesting facts I'm reading through.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing now too. So apparently they didn't call themselves Vikings. The term Viking comes from the Old Norse word Vikinger, which means pirate or raider. So it
mhm.
wasn't what they weren't referring to themselves as Vikings, it was the job title.
Right. You're right. And that's good to know too, because most of the history we have about the Vikings comes from people who were being raided by them, which isn't necessarily the most accurate source of information. You can imagine that people would be a little bitter after having their town destroyed.
Perception is everything, and you're going to get a different story based on who's telling the story and how they perceive the story. So, yeah, if you're on the not so great end, you're not going to be like sharing the most wonderful stories about these people. It's just,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, and that goes into some of the connotations we have about Vikings, like they were barbarians, but barbarian in itself was a slur against some of these people because they just didn't understand them. So the barbarians when they would talk, they would make fun of them as being like, oh, they're just saying bar 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 bar, and so they were
I mean,
barbarians.
you are invading, they would invade land and fight and kill and take. So,
Yeah,
that was
it
how
makes
they survived and that's how they made a living. That's how they moved and that's how they did things. But I mean, I can see it from both perspectives. If you're in that, you have to survive. You need land. You need to be able to survive. And then, but if you're
right.
coming and stealing my land and you're
Yeah,
killing my people and things that we've established, like you're a jerk.
right. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, they were violent people, but this idea that they were inherently violent or they had some like natural violent tendency to them is just, I mean, not true, but obviously, but you can see why people might paint them with that brush.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
here.
So they were very superstitious in a lot of ways and intuitive. They actually believed, and this comes up, like if you had a dream, they believed that dreams were prominent, like they could be very
Oh yeah, like a prophecy.
they
Yeah.
could be prophetic dreams. Thank you. They believed that dreams were ways to pass messages along. Um, and I don't know about you, but I've had some very interesting dreams in my lifetime. The more vivid ones include zombies. So I'm glad that that wasn't prophetic,
Yeah,
not as of
me
yet.
too.
um, because, or maybe in some multiverse version of myself, I am living in the post-apocalyptic zombie apocalypse and I am surviving. Or maybe I died and that's why I don't have the freaking dreams anymore. I don't know.
We can
It's
tell.
interesting.
But the Vikings would definitely take a lot more stock in those dreams. And yeah, that's probably where some of these stories came from. Is some prophetic dream or something like that. But yeah, I guess that's also why these stories were so important. They would have to, these dreams had some sort of intense meaning to them and they had to
Mhm.
fit into their reality in some way.
So we've all heard of the Kraken, especially through like if you watched a Lego movie and stuff. I think that's where I probably for the first time ever heard of Kraken. But
Release the Kraken. I mean, yeah. For me, it was that Olympian movie. I can't remember now. Um, oop, I lost Jessica for whatever reason, but I'm still here and I'm going to try to reconnect. Just bear with me, please. Do-do. Um, one moment, please. I'm just going to read through some comments while I'm waiting for Jessica to reconnect. Um, okay, Leafy, we've got the Iceland Greenland is at time a subconscious quote unquote reverse psychology, self slash clan way to remind of things not present at the place. So it's another story or a naming convention to support the memories of other places experienced. It's quite beautiful how mind and language works in so many ways. I agree. Yeah, and I think the our sort of collective consciousness and what exists in the world is growing and changing in this interesting way. But not prophetic, although partly goes into genetic memory. Right. So I don't know, a lot of people are proud of having some sort of Viking or Nordic ancestry. And I don't know how much of that um, you know makes up your experience of reality, but it's really cool to think about like how different people's experiences sort of shapes the way you see the world. Um, oh shoot. Jessica's laptop died and it's not charging. So I might have to end this early, but I want to make sure I get to everyone's comments. If there's anything anyone else wants to say before we go. Um, just to wrap things up, we'll have another cool topic next week. I'm not sure exactly what we'll be talking about, but it'll be fun. And I hope you guys like Vikings as much as I do. I had a fun time, and I'm sorry, I think we have to shut it down early because I don't want to just ramble at the camera. But I appreciate everyone for being here. And yeah, onward to Valhalla. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully we'll talk more about this later. Bye.